On behalf of USGBC and our partner ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, it's my honor and privilege to welcome you all to our leadership series on resiliency and security in the 21st century. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for today's event, the American Institute of Architects. They've been a strong collaborator with us at USGBC for a lot of years, and we really appreciate their support for this series. And I want to share that AIA is no newcomer to this issue. They've developed a lot of strong programs and built a great track record in helping communities recover and rebuild after disaster. In fact, I was with some friends from AIA just last week when they were announcing their Designing Recovery competition, which is giving out $10,000 awards to innovative designs that will help New York City, Joplin, and New Orleans build back better and stronger. So thanks so much to our friends at AIA. Two years ago, we launched this series to showcase leadership, to inspire action, and to spark a movement. And I thought it was really interesting earlier this year when Brian Walsh of Time magazine called resilience the buzzword of 2013. And I guess for those of us working on resiliency, maybe that's some validation. But it doesn't mean anything to cities and counties. They don't follow the buzz. They don't follow, period. They lead. And that's exactly how local leaders are taking on this challenge. Because since we started this speaker series, we've seen 14 separate billion-dollar disasters. In the last 2 years, we've lost nearly $200 billion in damages from disasters. In the last year alone, the federal government, unexpectedly I might add, had to spend $100 billion just to fight back the impacts of droughts and storms and fires and floods. Amazingly, that's more than the federal government spent that year on repairing our infrastructure or educating our kids. We've learned, I think, that none of us is immune. We're all vulnerable. In fact, 4 out of 5 Americans live in places that have been hit by federally declared weather-related disasters since 2006. And the number of people affected by climate-related natural disasters is expected to jump by 50% in just 2 short years. At the same time, we're literally watching what happens when you neglect our country's infrastructure year after year. In March, the American Society of Civil Engineers released its latest infrastructure report card that assesses all the places we learn, the roads we drive, the bridges that connect us, all 16 sectors of our infrastructure. What was our grade? A dismal D+. And according to ASCE, it's just going to get worse. They've identified an infrastructure investment gap of $1.6 trillion. Trillion. That's a staggering underinvestment in everything that makes our economy go. And who's going to pay the most for this neglect and inaction? It'll be our cities, our counties, and our towns. But we're lucky today because local leaders don't stand by. Local leaders don't debate ad nauseum. Local leaders don't deny the science. Local leaders don't delay. Just like they did on climate change, they're taking the lead on this new challenge. They're finding new ways to assess and address risk. They're fortifying critical infrastructure. They're improving building codes, and they're making planning a priority. It's pretty simple. Preparedness pays back. It makes great business sense, and more importantly, it saves lives. For every dollar spent on disaster preparedness, communities save $4 in avoided costs. And that's a testament to the return on investment of these future-proof solutions. Buildings really are a great example. Just like other sectors, buildings can either be a solution or an impediment in this race for a more resilient future. At USGBC, with our LEED Green Building Rating System, we've spent 13 years cultivating a culture of leadership to help drive change in that sector. And it's worked. We're certifying 1.5 million square feet of real estate to LEED every day. That's the equivalent of 5 Empire State Buildings a week. In total, more than 10 billion square feet of real estate is using LEED all across the country. And that's important because we've seen a really strong synergy in green building best practices and desired resiliency outcomes. As FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate said at this event last year, being green is just one part of being resilient. So if we do this right, we'll have cities and buildings that help protect the environment, that help tackle climate change, and help make us stronger. The choices we make today will reverberate long into the future, determining in many ways whether or not our cities are more resilient or more exposed. So today is about getting stronger, not because of national policy, but because of local commitment. Today, local leaders are taking the first step to put resilience on the national agenda. And today we announce an effort that will help bring resiliency into the very fabric of every community in America. Today we lay the cornerstone of communities built to last. And now, to formally announce the initiative that we're launching today, it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Mike Schmitz, the Executive Director of ICLEI. ICLEI, of course, is the nationally recognized leader in local sustainability, representing more than 450 cities and counties. And as their leader, Mike wakes up every single day trying to think about how to bring the benefits of sustainability, the economic and environmental benefits of sustainability, to communities all across the nation. And I'm really glad that he's on the job. Please help me welcome my friend Mike Schmitz.
Thank you, Jason, so much, and for your leadership and that of the U.S. Green Building Council, and to all our distinguished elected official leaders and speakers who are here and our honored guests. We've come together today because, as Jason has articulated so well, we face a serious challenge. We've come together because we recognize that our climate change and energy challenges cannot be ignored, and that our cities and counties are on the front line of responding to this new reality of extreme weather and hotter temperatures. I want to emphasize, climate change challenges are also energy security challenges, our infrastructure challenges, and our economic challenges. When we think about these issues, we need to connect the dots. If we don't prepare for and adapt to climate change impacts, we face continued disruptions in business that have cost us already billions and set back our national economic recovery. If we don't transition away from a fossil fuel-based economy, our greenhouse gas emissions will continue to rise, worsening the impacts, and the extreme weather we've already experienced will continue unabated. Everyone in this room understands the nature of these challenges, but today we're here to draw your attention to the positive solutions and the strong leadership that's taking shape across the nation. There's a movement emerging in the United States of local governments responding to the interconnected climate, energy, and economic challenges. It's a movement to ensure more resilient cities, towns, and counties that can bounce back and stay strong. Today, we're proud to announce the launch of the Resilient Communities for America campaign, which will give new strength and voice and direction to this movement. The chair of this campaign is Mayor Kevin Johnson of Sacramento, California, who joins 45 other top local elected officials on this day one of the campaign in making a commitment to creating more resilient cities and counties. These inaugural signatories include our distinguished speakers today and so many others across the country, including Mayor Bob Filner of San Diego, Mayor Ralph Becker of Salt Lake City, Mayor Tom Barrett of Milwaukee, Mayor Sly and James of Kansas City, Mayor Michael Hancock of Denver, Mayor Mark Mallory of Cincinnati, Mayor Kristen Jacobs of Broward County, and Mayor Don Zimmer of Hoboken, among many others. We applaud the leadership of these mayors, and we thank them for playing a primary role in this campaign. Mayors, county supervisors, thank you. At its essence, this campaign is simple. Local elected officials will showcase the Resilient Communities for America agreement to showcase leadership and commitment to improving community resilience. Their leadership, in turn, will help raise national awareness, not only of the challenges we face, but more importantly, the powerful solutions available to us. And finally, their leadership will inspire hundreds of others to take action and to make a commitment and to keep America strong. But one of the roadblocks to taking local action is that local governments still struggle with tight budgets and limited resources. That's why campaign partners here, ICLEI, U.S. Green Building Council, World Wildlife Fund, National League of Cities, will develop critical technical resources and leverage existing ones to provide them to local governments that sign on to the campaign. Through the campaign, we will also help to connect local governments to one another, to share challenges, solutions, and success stories. We don't have the luxury of time in responding to these impacts, and we know that local governments are taking action now, and we are going to help them connect. I can't emphasize enough the importance of networks for cities. ICLEI is the largest global network of cities and local governments, and around the world we act as a gateway for solutions for local governments. In the United States, ICLEI is the recognized leader on climate action and sustainability. Back in the 90s, we have supported a handful of cities and counties that got out in front and were addressing climate change. And since then, we have supported more than 800 local governments across the nation with cutting-edge software, tools, resources, trainings, and national standards. We help local governments innovate, and we provide a platform to scale up these innovations. Today, the local climate action movement takes another step forward with the Resilient Communities for America campaign. Our mission is to inspire a new level of action in our cities and counties. Our campaign chair, Mayor Kevin Johnson, could not be here today, but wanted to share with you his key message. As we face our climate and energy challenges, we must transform adversity into opportunity. Our environmental challenges are also our economic opportunities. When we scale up renewable energy, for example, we improve energy security, we improve energy reliability, we lower greenhouse gas emissions, we create jobs, and we strengthen our local economy in the process. That's resilience in action. We know that resilience doesn't look the same in every community because the challenges vary so much. But we do know what resilience looks like whenever we see it. It is standing up, it is coming together, it is bouncing back, and it is moving forward. It is, quite simply, America at its best. And now, it's my honor to highlight the elected officials who have joined us here today. Each will give you a sense of the climate and energy challenge they face in their communities and regions and share the goals and action they've already put into place to become more resilient. Our first speaker is the Honorable Mayor Vincent C. Gray of the District of Columbia. Mayor Gray was elected to office in November 2010, and since then he has moved forward to accomplish 4 top priorities: ensuring a public education for all district children, creating jobs and providing economic development opportunities, making sure residents feel safe no matter what neighborhood they live in, and ensuring the city is fiscally sound. Mayor Gray has also cemented the district's status as one of our nation's most sustainable cities. In February 2013, he released Sustainable DC, a groundbreaking 20-year plan to make the district the healthiest, greenest, most livable city in the nation. Please welcome Mayor Vincent Gray.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, for such a very nice introduction. I'm delighted to be here, Jason, with you. Thank you very much for your leadership, and to the other mayors and leaders who are here today, to Mayor County, to Mayor Cook, to Mayor Cooper, and to Supervisor Carbajal. Thank you all very much for your leadership as well. It really is a pleasure to welcome all of you who are here to the District of Columbia, and to join forces with our colleagues from around the country, with the U.S. Green Building Council, the National League of Cities, with ICLEI, and of course the World Wildlife Fund, to highlight the critical importance of preparing our cities, our infrastructure, and our people for the risks associated with what we know as a changing climate. Here in Washington, it becomes clear with each passing season how rising temperatures, rising tides, and extreme weather, and already are actually, affecting the health and safety of our residents, the strength of our economy, and the fabric of our communities across the city. Last year was our hottest on record, and with it came power outages, buckled rail lines, and unhealthy air. I've lived in Washington my entire life, but not until last year that I learned the term derecho, a uniquely powerful storm that literally roared through our region, leaving millions without power and causing millions of dollars of damage in its wake. In fact, we faced the threat of another derecho here just last week, and it managed to avoid us for the most part. While we are obviously far from Tornado Alley and the devastation that has occurred so far this year, we have become increasingly familiar with tornado warnings, even here in this coastal area. We are at the beginning of another hurricane season, and we're told to expect more intense storms than usual. So we will be keeping a watchful eye on what's coming up the coast throughout this entire summer. You know, Washington is known as the city on the Potomac, but what many people do not realize is that we are a coastal city embraced by two tidal rivers, and that we are very vulnerable to rising waters. Much of our city and some of our most treasured sites sit just a few feet above sea levels that are rising, frankly, at an alarming rate. Did you know that if Superstorm Sandy, which was just a few months ago, had followed the southern path projections, our city, your nation's capital, was looking at a storm surge of over 20 feet. To put this in context, this surge would have inundated the National Gallery of Art, the FBI, the IRS, Justice Department, Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Education, and frankly, our City Hall as well, which is right down the street. Like New Jersey and New York, we would have experienced massive damage to electric infrastructure, our roads, and to our metro subway system, as well as our wastewater treatment plant at Blue Plains. We narrowly avoided the destruction, but we cannot avoid to ignore the lessons we learned about the risks that we face. And so it is imperative that we build a more resilient city. We can't wait for the next generation to solve this problem. We have to act now. In DC, we are pulling in data and resources to help us identify our vulnerabilities and assess our risks so that we are able to determine the most accurate projections for local impacts. In our sustainability plan, Sustainable DC, released earlier this spring in April after working on a vision for this for about a year, we've now incorporated climate risk assessment and adaptive planning throughout. And we will be focusing on energy supply, distribution, transportation infrastructure, as well as building standards. Through our Sustainable DC Innovation Grant Program, we funded the first phase of an adaptation and resiliency plan for the city, which is an effort that will be coordinated across sectors, disciplines, and all levels of government and businesses within the city. Our building industry is installing green roofs that capture water and cool our neighborhoods faster than any city in the nation. We installed over 500,000 square feet of green roof just last year. Our Department of General Services is working with private building owners to examine widespread implementation of cool, green, and solar roofs, energy conservation, and generating local power. We just announced a major initiative to secure key electric infrastructure with a $1 billion investment in undergrounding power lines. And our electric utility, PEPCO, has fully implemented a shift to smart meters that will enable smart grid applications to better manage load and to react to disruption. So while we work to better understand our vulnerabilities and assess our risks from storm surge, violent storms, and extreme heat, we also are acting today to implement best practices to help protect our city. Climate resilience builds upon and gives new imperative to many of the tools and programs we already are using to meet our greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. Our sustainable DC goal is to reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2032 and a total of 80% by 2050, and we're actually making significant progress. From 2006 to 2011, over a 5-year span, we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 12%. Even with a population increase of 6%, and an additional 40,000 new jobs have been created here in our city. Clearly, a more efficient city is a more resilient city, and we're acting now and moving forward to promote energy efficiency any way we can. And we are doing this while growing one of the most robust urban economies in the nation. Our impressive, what we think is impressive, emission reductions have been led by bold government initiatives and carried forward by robust and collaborative private sector participation. Just 2 weeks ago, my administration forwarded to the DC Council a new construction code that embodies the latest in energy efficiency. I made clear when we started this process last year that I wanted a cutting-edge code, and the proposal we sent, including a first-ever green code, will significantly improve building performance. I am very proud to say that the district will, any day now, surpass 100 million square feet of LEED certified projects. We have seen broad private market adoption of LEED standards well ahead of the city's legal requirements under the Green Building Act. We also are strongly promoting the use of green power. In both 2011 and 2012, the district was the U.S. EPA #1 green power community, with over 10% of all electricity use citywide tied to green power. We're promoting widespread integration of solar and other renewables through our sustainable energy utility, our renewable portfolio standards, and of course the country's most robust market for renewable energy credits, solar renewable energy credits. To expand renewable use even further, we are soliciting right now partners to help us develop a dedicated commercial-scale wind energy facility to supply the district government. We also are looking hard at reducing use of fossil fuels. Creating a resilient and sustainable city is a paradigm shift, changing the way to do business to reflect a new reality that we are living with. That is why on June 6th, just a matter of days ago, I announced new legislation to ban the burning of coal in the District of Columbia. We know that we can shift to clean and renewable fuels to reduce emissions and greatly reduce air pollution. For the District of Columbia, it is the right time to end the burning of coal, and I hope others will follow suit. As you can see, the district is committed, an ambitious goal and immediate action plan that we have adopted to a resilient city that is hopefully preparing us for the future. But we are not doing this alone. We're learning lessons every day from the experience of forward-thinking leaders like those who are up here with me today, who are committing, as well as you out there, to resilient communities for America, which is a campaign that we are officially launching today. We recognize that we have an obligation to inform and support our fellow local government leaders and to call them to action. The Resilient Communities Campaign will allow us to work together to effectively engage our communities, implement strategic solutions, and leverage our resources. As local government leaders, it is up to us to lead the way and to ensure we can protect our cities, our local economies, and our most precious resource, and that, of course, is our citizens in the face of a changing climate. Thank you all very much.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for your resolve, your leadership, and let me put the debate to rest. We are all very impressed. That is amazing progress. And let me be the first to welcome you to what I've just dubbed the 100 million square foot club. That's awesome. That's a challenge to all the cities and counties. Really appreciate your leadership. Our next speaker is a good friend and an amazing leader on sustainability. From Des Moines, Iowa, Mayor Frank County. And he's been in office since 2004. He's played leadership roles at the national and international level. He's a nationally known champion for sustainable cities, for green building. In fact, in a few months, he'll be welcoming 3 new LEED Platinum buildings in the city of Des Moines. Another example of how he's leading the way to a more sustainable city. He was there, and I was with him at the historic climate conference in Copenhagen. He was serving as a U.S. local government delegate and representing America's cities. He's active in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and he serves on ICLEI's board of directors. And it's a real honor to introduce him today because, this is the things I had to say. Here's the thing I want to say. When I got on the job here at USGBC almost 7 years ago now, one of the first places I visited was Des Moines, Iowa, on the invitation of Mayor County. And he inspired me, not just for what he was doing in Des Moines, but he said, look, this is what's happening on the ground in middle of America. And if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. So I really appreciate his leadership, and I appreciate everything that he's taught me about how we can help local leaders do what they're doing so well. Mayor County, thank you so much.
I don't quite know how to follow up that introduction. Thank you very much, Jason. I wanted to share with all of you some of the things that Des Moines is doing, but maybe best represented. This paper represents all the awards that the city of Des Moines has gotten essentially since 2010. So including, but I've got to tell you, Mayor, Des Moines, it said we're the strongest economy in the country, #2. Now, unfortunately, in terms of job growth, apparently Washington, D.C. is #1. And so we're going to try harder, I want you to know. And we're going to, so you know that we're going to be out there battling with you. We're out from in the middle of America. As Jason said, when we started this effort in our city in Des Moines, Iowa, I got to tell you, it wasn't easy. Because I was looking just prior to getting up here, a friend of mine had sent me a little cartoon. It showed all the benefits of addressing climate change and lowering costs of living and improving air quality and doing a whole list of things. And of course, the guy that's the naysayer in the audience said, but what if it's all a hoax? And what if we do all these things for nothing? And you know what? We do it because it's not just about climate change, it's about the future for our kids. If climate change is not affecting public health, let's work on public health anyway. Let's, we always have people in the room that are always thinking that we're not exactly all over all the facts and all the everything else that needs to happen to prove up on the things that we work on. And as we mayors in our cities try to move some things forward, I got to tell you, there was a couple of times I was on the back end of some votes, and I had to, because I thought, when I was first elected, that, you're mayor, the council is going to go along with you, the staff's going to go along with you, everybody's going to switch tomorrow, and things are just going to go along swimmingly. And I'll tell you that it didn't. And so I had to kind of re-educate myself and think about how you show people a way to move forward, and how we work through all of our neighborhoods and all of our businesses. And for, as Jason said, we've got some local businesses that have worked very hard on their LEED certifications. And we are expecting 3 LEED Platinums. So we're working harder and we're trying harder. But I had to make a business case to a couple of those people to even try it. I said, oh, you can do it with government money over there. You know, I heard it's 20–30% more to construct to that standard. And we just can't afford to do it. The payback just doesn't make sense. Well, I pushed one of our leading businesses again and again. And now, based upon what I just heard, we're going to have in Des Moines, Iowa, the largest single-user, single-owner LEED Platinum building, not only in the United States, but I think it may be the largest one in the world. So, and it didn't come easily. I got some bruises on the way, but you know, at the end of the day, the CEO of that business made a business case for why they could do it, and that the payback in this was going to be much more quick than almost anything else that they were investing in. One of the moments when everybody kind of came around to it in our own staff, I think just to sort of, you know, placate me and say, you know, we'll do something. I suggested we were doing a city facility, a large maintenance facility that covered a quarter of our, you know, their responsibility is about a quarter of our city. And I said, why don't you just finally do me a favor? Bid this thing out with all the specs and do it in the regular way, in the conventional construction method, and then we've got an architect that's willing to step up and design same kind of features, but let's do it on a LEED. Would you just try that? And so they did, and the bids, you know, the RFP goes out, the bids come back, and to the amazement of the staff, not only was it competitive, the LEED building came back, the bid was under the conventional build. And so all of a sudden, this staff that had, you know, fought me all the way, they all became disciples. And I went to a meeting when they were telling all the benefits of this new building, and it was so funny because here was a guy that I had argued with, and we'd gotten bloody knuckles almost over trying to work on this. And I got to tell you, I thought this guy invented LEED by the time I was done. I couldn't believe it. They introduced him as the world expert on this thing. But you know what? That's okay, because that's what we've got to do as mayors and as leaders. We've got to instill a vision in the rest of our community and the rest of our businesses that this is possible, that this is a model that we can follow, and it's going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference in our building operations, in our greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to have a healthier city. We're going to have a cooler city, like green roofs and some of the other things. We're planting thousands of trees in the city of Des Moines, probably not as many as in Washington, D.C., but we're a little smaller. We keep trying harder. But these are things that we have to do and lead by example, because one of the things that we discover as we move along the way, that city government, we can't ask anybody by code or any other way to do anything, because then they show up at City Hall and they say, yeah, look there, you want me to have a green parking lot. You want trees in there, you want bioswales, you want to capture the runoff, you want to do this and that. I don't see that happening in your parking lots. Why would you ask us to do something and pass a code that is kind of two-sided? You got one that's for you and one that's for us. Well, I was convinced we couldn't do that, and we had to lead by that example. You know, I think as we prepare for climate change and extreme weather conditions, it's incumbent on us to think about our infrastructure, and Des Moines is looking at those things. We have a green infrastructure performance thing, and one of those things that staff was a little slow to, on the uptake, because when you have a bunch of engineers that have been on the job for 20, 30 years, their design looks pretty gray. Green infrastructure and trying to get moisture back in the soil is not exactly top on their agenda. They like sticking it in a pipe and sticking it at the nearest creek and the nearest river and shoving it on downstream. But as we know, not only does it not benefit the folks down the stream, but we hope that if we establish a green infrastructure policy and begin to capture the rain where it falls, rather than sending it downstream, as much of it as we can, that if people upstream will do it, it'll help us. So the golden rule probably should be, don't do anything to anybody downstream that you don't want anybody upstream to do to you. And so we're out trying to do that in our watersheds and pass that along and try to lower it. Because here we are in the press conference, we talked about all the events that we've had which are flood related in the city of Des Moines. But we found a way, even with more water, to do it. But we've got to work through the Corps of Engineers because we've got all these levees and we got everything else. And then you've got FEMA that's out, that they look at your levees and they certify the levees, and then they tell people whether or not they can get insurance. And so all these things are, at least in this case, for us, infrastructure driven. And I know that the coastal cities are dealing with similar issues. But here in Des Moines, we can't do a thing. We can't touch a levee that's a certified core levee without having an agreement with them to not touch it. They design it. They look at the flows of the river, and they look at the peak flows, and then they decide whether or not they can do it. And they do a preliminary study, and then they've got to come back and do the final study. And only then will they okay the construction, which they run and they issue the contract, and they do it because it's their levy and they certify it. But in the meantime, you've got that going on, and then you look at the pollution that's in there, and you start seeing how all these pieces work together. And here we are in Iowa, agricultural Iowa, and we know that the stuff that's coming down the rivers that we pull our drinking water out of is 85% is rural ag runoff. Well, at this time, as I speak to you, even with all these massive flows that have come off, you'd think it would have cleaned up the water. Apparently there must be the applications. We've got higher nitrate levels, 60% higher than are allowable under EPA standards. So we've got to do something about it. Well, luckily, we've got a huge reservoir that we have that's clean water, and we can mix and keep it within those parameters and have fresh, healthy drinking water for our citizens in the city of Des Moines. But how long are we going to be able to do this? Because cities, we're source point polluters. And that 85%, they're not. We need to work on that. We've got to get all departments working together. We've got to get EPA working with Department of Agriculture, and I think it's starting to happen because as we've looked at our regional sustainability planning effort, we were one of the cities that got awarded that grant. We brought them in, and we had that discussion, and I think that it's only with all the departments working together that we're going to achieve some of the things that we want. Certainly, I am honored to be here and be part of this discussion, and hopefully any of you want to stay around and have questions or anything afterwards. We'd love to talk about Des Moines, and I could do it for an hour, but I know that my time is very limited here. And but it is an honor, but let's all keep working together, because it's only with a voice at the local government level where it's happening that we can convince people at the state level and the federal level that we need assistance in planning, we need departments to work together, and then to give us the rules, the regulations, and hopefully a little bit of financial aid that we can clean it up, because we're the go do it people. So thank you very much for being here, and we're honored, and hopefully the discussion will continue as we continue to bring more cities and more counties into a resilient effort, and kicking off today. And I'll come out any time that you want, and let's move it forward.
Special thanks to Mayor County, who not only sits on our board of ICLEI as a representative of the Global Executive Committee, but frankly, with my Midwestern roots, makes me both proud and happy to come visit Des Moines and be able to get that Midwestern, not just hospitality, but that visionary future thinking. Thank you, Mayor. Now I turn to introduce Mayor John Cook of El Paso, Texas, first elected as mayor in 2005. He's received numerous awards and accolades during his years of service. In 2013, he was inducted into the Fort Bliss Hall of Fame, and in 2012, he was named Elected Official of the Year by the Rio Grande Council of Governments. Mayor Cook has led the city through an aggressive revitalization effort. The city recently adopted a new comprehensive plan that has been recognized as America's Best Smart Growth Plan and received the EPA's National Award for Smart Growth Achievement. Mayor Cook has served on the board for El Paso's water utility for the past 8 years, as the utility has led the country in water conservation efforts and created a world-class stormwater utility to manage increasingly severe flooding events even as it faces drought. Please welcome Mayor John Cook of El Paso. Thank you.
Well, I'm really blessed that Mayor Filner's not here today, because the two of us would have spent the 9 minutes that were allocated arguing about which is the largest international multiplex on the southern border. So, of course, he has to pack a lunch in order to walk from San Diego to Tijuana, and I could go back and forth 15 times by foot in the same amount of time. So, but most of us are familiar with the war stories about how climate change has impacted us. El Paso is no exception to that. As I told you during the press conference, when I took office in 2005, I think I had been in office for a couple of weeks when Governor Perry called me and asked me how many evacuees from Katrina we could take. Shortly after that, we had Hurricane Rita, the same scenario. How many evacuees can you handle from Hurricane Rita? And I thought we were pretty much immune to that, you know, living in the middle of the desert and sort of in the middle of the country, protected by mountains and stuff like that. We don't get tornadoes. But what hit us in 2006 is we got 3 years worth of rain in 7 days. And it made us realize that we did not have a stormwater utility that could handle all of that rain. Seeing that we hardly ever get any, we hadn't prepared for it. And the way El Paso is built, we have the Franklin Mountains sit right in the middle of the city. Unfortunately for us, all of the rain was right on top of that mountain, and all it did was run off and try to get to the Rio Grande, had to go through neighborhoods. We had thousands of people lost their homes. The damage to the public infrastructure, $450 million. That doesn't even include what happened to private investment and private properties. So what we did is we created that world-class stormwater utility and gave people some rules. If you had impervious ground, then you were going to pay a tax for it. We didn't call it a tax because that's a cuss word, so we called it a fee instead. So we charged a fee to raise money. The stormwater utility had always been under the streets department, and the streets department never fought very hard for stormwater issues. They fought hard to pave streets. So and unfortunately for us, our budget is done in August and September, and that's not when we get rain. So who's going to think about rain when you're not getting any? But we thought after we got rid of Storm 2006, that's what El Pasoans refer to it as, we thought we were pretty much finished with natural disasters. 2011, we had a freeze that hit us. Typically, the temperatures in El Paso very seldom get down to freezing, maybe 1 day or 2 days out of the entire year. For 5 days, we had temperatures that were 17 below zero. We were looking at the national weather forecast. We were colder than Anchorage, Alaska, and here we are in El Paso, Texas. Yesterday it was 106 in El Paso, so you can imagine nobody was prepared for that. The gas utility, everybody cranked up their gas. They lost all the pressure, so residences could not get gas power to their houses. The electric company started getting brownouts, so as they started rolling brownouts, the water utility wasn't prepared for the brownouts because all of a sudden the water pumps stopped working, and at 17 below zero, the pumps themselves froze, burst, so we lost water, we lost electricity, we lost gas. I'm a retired telephone man. The only thing we didn't lose was telephone service. So, but that really woke us up and said, you know, what we need to do is have a plan. How do we deal with that? And so now we put emergency generating facilities in that if the electricity goes out, we can handle it. We've encouraged the electric company to put additional resources into the electric facilities that we have for more generating capacity. And in 2013, we had our next deal, which was the drought. Everybody knows that droughts are sort of cyclical. They usually run 7 years. We're in year 15 of a 7-year drought. And just so you know, everybody's heard of the Rio Grande. In the summertime, that's where we get 100% of our drinking water is from the Rio Grande. There was one allocation of water that came down the Rio Grande this year, and unfortunately, the dry soil sucked it all up. And what wasn't sucked up by dry soil, the atmosphere itself with 100-degree weather took that water. So now we don't have our main water supply, which means we have to rely on our 2 underground aquifers. I mentioned we're an international city. The other people who have their straw in that same aquifer is Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. The population of El Paso is about 600,000 people. Juarez, Mexico is 1.7 million. So whatever happens to them happens to us. Whatever happens to us happens to them. We share the same water, the same air, the same culture, and we're all in this together. So anytime we have a solution, it makes me realize that that solution has to be international. And if you look beyond that, we really have to have a global solution to this. Anybody who thinks that this is not about greenhouse gases and about global warming, wake up, get another cup of coffee, join the real world, because the real world is in global warming. The real world has to worry about carbon emissions. The real world has to worry about your carbon footprint, and the real world has to worry about global warming and greenhouse gases. If we don't, we're in big trouble. So what are we going to do about it? In El Paso, we came up with several things that we want to do. Fort Bliss, Texas has grown since 2005 until last year. They grew from 9,000 soldiers to 34,000 soldiers. They're in the same environment as us. They use the same electricity. Fortunately for us, Fort Bliss, Texas has a goal of becoming 100% energy efficient, and that's for water, energy, and waste. That's their goal. Why did they decide they were going to do that? From the lessons that they learned in Iraq and Afghanistan. The majority of the casualties that we've had there are from transporting fossil fuels to outposts. So it makes sense for them to experiment with a place like Fort Bliss out in the middle of the desert, a very similar climate to what you find in Afghanistan and Iraq, and find out if you can become self-sufficient there, use those same technologies to do the same thing when we're in the war zones. Another thing we've done about it is we've converted our entire mass transit fleet to 100% compressed natural gas. We have natural gas lines that run from us all around the world, and you know what? You know where we get our compressed natural gas from? We get it from California, we get it from Colorado, and we get it from other places around the nation. It all has to be trucked in, adding to the greenhouse gases. So we're building a facility right now to convert that natural gas, which just passes through El Paso, so that we can convert it and use it. And I've also suggested that we open this up not just for us and our mass transit fleet, but allow other people to use our facility so we can encourage other people to use compressed natural gas. We've also gone to a fleet of hybrid vehicles for the city. We've encouraged hike and bike trails and actually started building them. We have a Bike to Work Day. You know, Texans are pretty much married to their vehicles. As a matter of fact, we'd rather get in a fist fight than to park our car at a park and ride and get on mass transit. And one of the reasons for that is our mass transit system was terrible. When I took office in 2005, our on-time reliability was 70%. Through an investment of millions and millions of dollars, we've been able to change that. Our on-time performance is now 98% on time with that compressed natural gas buses that run around town, and people are finally starting to use it. Since 2009, we have actually got people to start using mass transit, and the usership has grown by 5% a year. So less people getting in fistfights and more people getting on the buses. We've also had $100 million worth of retrofits over a 10-year period. You know, this is really all about goal setting, realistic goal setting. So we've committed to $100 million worth of investments to retrofit our existing buildings and infrastructure in order to be more energy efficient. Plus, we set a standard that we will build no public building in the city of El Paso unless it's at least LEED Gold or LEED Platinum. We're just not going to do it. If it costs us more, so be it. Because we have a responsibility to leave this planet in better shape for our children and our grandchildren, and if we don't, shame on us. Unfortunately for me, I represent the state of Texas at this meeting. The state of Texas should hang their head in shame. They don't have realistic goals setting for cities to use renewable energy. As a matter of fact, being an oil producer and a gas producer, we have exactly the opposite. We look at those oil and gas industries as being the lifeblood of the economy for the state of Texas. You can see there's an economic boom in Texas, despite the fact that there was an economic recession around the rest of the country. One of the reasons for that is because they relied on the oil and gas industry, which was growing. Back to the water issue, on Fort Bliss, we built the world's largest inland desalination plant. El Paso sits on top of an underground aquifer. The problem with it is most of it is pretty brackish, so that plant that we built is able to produce 10.5 million gallons of drinking water a day. That's what we're relying on today because the Rio Grande is dry. Let's come up with solutions for our children and our grandchildren. Let's leave this planet in better shape for them. And God bless America. God bless Texas.
Thank you, Mayor Cook. I think that was the best description of the complexity and the interrelatedness of our challenge and how an integrated approach can help solve our problems. Thank you for your leadership and everything you're doing in El Paso. I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, Supervisor Salud Carbajal of Santa Barbara County in California, who was first elected to the board in 2004. Today he serves as the chair of the Board of Supervisors. Over the years, his public service has demonstrated a strong commitment to protecting our natural environment and resources, and he's been a leader on local sustainability. He serves on the Energy and Environment Committee at the National Association of Counties, and he's vice chair of EPA's Local Government Advisory Committee. He's also a board member at ICLEI. And what I like to say about Salud is that even in one of the greenest states in the country, California, Santa Monica stands out, Santa Monica County. And one of the reasons that it does is because of the leadership of Supervisor Carbajal. So please help me welcome the supervisor.
Well, there's so many mayors here today. I kind of want to be a mayor too now. So, county government is the least known and least understood form of government in our country. So I'm really glad to be able to represent them today. You know, everywhere I go, I usually say that I'm from a little poor fishing village called Santa Barbara. And as I was leaving at the airport yesterday, I ran into Oprah. And I was reminded how poor we are not in Santa Barbara County. So let me say how honored and privileged I feel to be amongst my colleagues up here who are doing extraordinary things in their jurisdictions. What does it mean to be resilient? Well, I think it means for me 3 words: security, stability, and sustainability. As our cities and counties face a future of unprecedented challenges due to global and economic and climate change, we must proactively plan to adapt accordingly. To be resilient, we must ensure the security of our food, energy, and water supplies. We need to plan for and be able to respond to these unprecedented disruptions that threaten the stability of our public infrastructure and institutions. In Santa Barbara County, where I am from, we have already experienced many and anticipate experiencing a number of impacts from the current economic and environmental uncertainty. These include a year-round fire season. In the past 4 years, we endured 4 wildfires. And as you can imagine, it's really strained our community in being able to address those challenges. Having to address critical infrastructure within coastal areas that may be affected by sea level rise, increased risk of droughts and flooding, and pressure to develop more offshore and onshore oil and natural gas reserves through drilling and hydraulic fracturing are pressures we face today. In proactively looking ahead, both the state of California and Santa Barbara County have taken steps to address the call to become more resilient. Mayor Cook, when you're done with your service, we welcome you to Santa Barbara County in the great state of California.
I have 4 days left.
I will send an official invitation. In 2006, the state of California passed AB 32, the Global Warming Solution Act. AB 32 requires greenhouse gas emissions in the state of California to be at 1990 levels by the year 2020. It also instituted regulations for a cap and trade market-based system as part of the greenhouse gas reduction effort. In 2008, SB 375 was also passed in an effort to help implement and achieve the 1990 greenhouse gas emissions goal. A major component of SB 375 was initiating a process to develop regional greenhouse gas reduction targets from passenger vehicles by 2020 and 2035. At the local level, Santa Barbara County has implemented a number of measures to become more sustainable and resilient. In 2000, the development of a sustainability plan that quantified our greenhouse gas emissions and measures for reductions, such as a community choice aggregate programs, have been instituted or initiated. We developed an energy action plan partnership with Southern California Edison, which sets an energy reduction goal of 25% by 2020 using 2008 as the baseline. And as Mayor County said, it's important for counties to model the way before they impose other types of measures on the broader community. We implemented solar projects at our sanitary facility and at one of our government campuses. We are developing a conversion technology facility that will improve disposal of our solid waste. Currently, Santa Barbara County recycles 73% of our waste, but that other 27% is what I am referring to. Conversion technology will further recycle that 27% and turn what we can't recycle into an alternative energy. Also reducing landfill gas emissions, equating to taking 24,000 vehicles off our roads annually. I am also proud to be co-hosting with ICLEI next Friday, I believe it's Friday, a symposium on community resiliency with our regional partners and elected officials, business community, and NGOs to discuss how we could collectively take a regional approach to these challenges. In closing, we all know that resiliency comes from action at the local level. efforts at the local level has and will always lead the way. This is why it is important for mayors and county supervisors to commit, sign the Resiliency Communities Pledge, and join the call to action. Make no mistake, the stakes are high. Failure to act will jeopardize our economy, health, environment, and overall way of life. It will mean more extreme weather events, more economic strife, and more public health and safety risks. Let's create and leave our children, grandchildren, and future generations a resilient world that can endure. In closing, I want to read you a quote by the late John F. Kennedy. I look forward to an America which will not be afraid of grace and beauty, which will protect the beauty of our natural environment, an America which commands respect throughout the world, not only for its strength, but for its civilization as well. John F. Kennedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you for your words and your leadership. And though I have Midwestern roots, I now have a California address, and I look forward to joining you this Friday. We now turn to a speaker who has been, in her 14 years of office, at the forefront long before it was popular or frankly even known. Mayor Joy Cooper of Hallandale Beach, Florida, was first elected to the Hallandale Beach City Commission in 1999. She served as commissioner, vice mayor, and is the first directly elected mayor in the history of Hallandale Beach. She is a past president of the Broward League of Cities, as well as the Florida League of Cities, and she currently sits on the board of directors of the National League of Cities. At the U.S. Conference of Mayors, she serves on the advisory board and is chair of the environmental committee. She has worked to make Hallandale Beach a clean and green community and is a vocal champion for action on climate change. Mayor Cooper was one of the original signatories of the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement in 2005, and we are honored that she is an inaugural signatory of the Resilient Communities for America campaign. Please welcome Mayor Cooper.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here in Washington, Mayor. Thank you very much for your hospitality. I don't know, it's kind of tough going last, so I guess they saved not necessarily the smallest, but the oldest one for last here. No, I'm only joking. Seriously, since you've all been listening to a lot of speeches, I have a written speech that I'll go back to, but I figured I'd share a little personal story at this time. I'm actually a transplant to Florida. I've lived in Florida about 22 years. I was born in Trenton, raised in Pennsylvania. So I say I have one side on each side of the Delaware, 1 foot. Before I went down there, if anybody digs back in the memory, I think that you might remember there was one large named storm heading towards Florida, and that was Andrew. I had just given birth. I had a 3-year-old son. And we were going down. My mom, by marriage, lived in Hallandale Beach. About a week into getting ready to pack up the car, she's going, Joy, turn on the TV. There's a hurricane coming. Oh, okay, Mom. I'll do that. A couple of days later, I'm all packed up. My husband's already gone in the car with my son and my older daughter, and I'm at home. Turn on the TV. Mom, it's okay. Harry's going down. We've been watching. It doesn't look too bad, right? It didn't look too bad at first. So I'm getting ready to get on the plane. A couple days into the trip, and my husband's in Orlando. Turn on the TV now. The news reporter was actually televising from the Dade-Broward County line. They were in my backyard of a brand new home that I had just bought. So that was my first experience with a hurricane. Needless to say, it took a while to get down there. The streets were closed. My husband actually got stuck in Orlando. I certainly didn't fly down with a newly born child, and it was pretty horrific. And if you haven't seen that type of destruction, it is horrific. To go down and look at the Keys, devastated, people without food, people without water, homes literally without roofs. And the frustration that you feel when you see communities like that is painful. And I think resiliency, it's very important. We talk about energy, we talk about water, we talk about all the action steps that we can take to address some of the things that we can control. Some of the things that we can't control are Mother Nature. We can work with her maybe, we can prepare for her, we can armor maybe our beaches, we can address our water resources. But until we learn that we have to have a shared responsibility when it comes to resiliency, we're not going to make it. And I think in Florida, once you experience something like that, and I'm not saying, you know, the fires in California, the floods that my colleagues here have looked at and worked at, they get it, because we're in the grassroots and we're the ones that have to provide and protect, as you said so eloquently, protect our residents and our communities. We've been in the trenches, and we have made steps and continue to make steps to prepare the shared responsibility of not just the leaders, not just poor little old me lugging water when FEMA was 72 hours not there yet, but making sure we have food, water, and resources, but empowering our residents to address their needs as well. So I think resiliency is an extremely broad topic, so it was a little challenging to share with you where we were at and what I've learned about resiliency living in Florida now for 22 years. The city where I live is Hallandale Beach. It's just south of Fort Lauderdale, north of Miami, on a beautiful coast. If anybody has ever been down there, or is anybody involved in racing, my city actually is home to 2 racinos, one being Mardi Gras Racetrack and the other being Gulfstream Racetrack, which is home of the Florida Derby and one of the races for the Triple Crown. So we have a nice economy, but we're still a smaller size city, medium size compared to Florida. But we're in the center and what I call ground zero of what it means to have elevated seas. What does it mean to have tidal surges? What does it mean to have threatened water resources? So we've been working on those issues, and earlier it was mentioned County Mayor Kristen Jacobs has really taken the lead and really captured the necessity of working within Palm Beach County, Broward County, and Dade County. And we've been engaged on the grassroots level doing that partnership. I wanted to also share with you that those recent storms, there was a lot of lessons learned about resiliency. And actually, we stole one from California, who's dealt with earthquakes and the tragedy of earthquakes, and looked at getting citizens' emergency response teams out on the grassroots level. Real low-hanging fruit, but actually training people to come forward that are actually certified by our EMS that can go out and help people in need. They put on a coat, they know how to triage, they are there, because if our first responders can't get through the roadway, we have to help one another. We've also learned, and as builders and future, hopefully, leaders, I feel a little kind of, I told Mr. Schmidt, I feel kind of old up here, but the future leaders and cutting edge leaders here in this room that are going to really pave the way with the engineering and the technology to work on building codes and improved building codes, which have been modeled in South Florida. And there's been a wake-up call down there. I have to tell you, though, Broward and Dade, we are the only ones that are still structured on the wind, the structural wind loads and wind capacities. And it's hard to imagine that the rest of the state hasn't really adopted all those codes yet. So there's a way to go, but our county and Dade, we've adapted building codes. Of course, we've been looking at all our flood zones and working on floods. I'll touch on that a little bit later, but also hurricanes. and hurricane shelters particularly, and food resources. And that is a new threat to South Florida with the changes in flood zones. Where are we going to house our people? In Florida, being surrounded by water, there is only one. You can go west, but what's west? The Everglades. You know, we're surrounded by water. So really looking at hardening shelters where we have to put our needy or our elderly that are very on dialysis. Those types of real issues are still being addressed as we speak today, and how we're going to address them. Also, flooding. Flooding's critical. You talked earlier about how, you know, we're perceived as the polluters. It's not that we're the polluters, we're the ones that are downstream, right? So we've been looking at flooding this past week alone. If you turned on the newspaper, from the actual remnants of the storm that hit the Gulf, we were hit with microbursts. Just last week, my city was once again under 2.5 feet of water. We're 1.5 feet above sea level. We were very fortunate, though, because we have worked with FEMA. We've worked with the Department of Environmental Protection, and we are actually putting in an $8 million pumping system. I'm going to say that again, $8 million. In a small, mid-sized city, that is almost 1/5 of my general operating budget. It is a major impact. It's an impact to our budgets and our people, our residents' pocketbooks. Without that partnership with FEMA, we wouldn't be able to do this project. But since we had the pumps and some secondary pumps already set up, being Ground Zero, communities in Hollywood, North Miami, and actually other communities in Dades were hit pretty hard. Our city alone, 200 cars were towed last week. We had a seawall collapse, and we had 4 families without a home that we had to find shelter for. And that's a rainstorm, an unplanned tropical end of another storm. 2 years ago, we've had microbursts. That's something new, too, that I've learned. Also putting the lowest level of our city underground by, in some areas, almost 3 feet. 18 inches in less than 18 hours of range, a deluge. And that finally was the call to say, we need help, we need a resource to address our flooding. So we have the partners. It's getting that partnership together, working and understanding that it's still going to take money, it's going to take resources, and it's going to work collaborations, and that's what today is about. I'm going to talk also a little bit about water because it ties into our flooding issues, and one of the gentlemen that was at our earlier press conference had asked me, what is a salinity barrier? It's like, oh, okay. I thought I was in the room with all the scientists and everybody was like, well, as you've heard, sea level elevation, Florida, we're surrounded by water, literally. It comes from the skies in more ways than one. In deluges. We have the Atlantic, we have the Gulf, and we also have the Floridian and the other aquifers. But we struggle with our water because, being an Eastern community, we used to have 13 fresh water wells, some of the purest, best water, and it's not that hard to treat. Of all those wells, we have 2 left. All have been fallen to salinity, and we cannot draw from them. We're now dependent on water from the west. To pump that water off, it's also cost effective, and last week it was contaminated. We were crippled for 3 days during a weekend, one of our highest economic times, in a city that has 2 casinos, without being able for our businesses to use potable water. These are real issues happening today. What we've done is looked at a process, partnering with Mayor Jacobs on a water task force, partnering with DEP to create and utilize that $8 million resource to pump water from flooding and also ocean outfalls into the ground to save off and push pressure back up against the ocean. I think it's one of the first test pilots that they're looking at to do so. We're studying it, we're researching it. It's going to be a really exciting way that we can actually reuse water for green infrastructure and get credit. We can actually address flooding, and we're doing it all with collaboration. So that is some of the critical infrastructure issues that I look at first and prioritize. Water, safety of my residents, water, and sustainability of our economy. The next level is really important, and I'm always excited to talk about energy and energy conservation. We have one of the first strongest ordinances. We only allow you to water your yard once a week. People thought the sky was falling. I can't water my green grass. Trust me, you can water your grass 1 day a week. We have conserved 1 million gallons a year easily in water plus, and we keep getting better. So we can work on conserving water. We've also, when I spoke earlier, we were fortunate to have energy development block grants. It was great in one of the economic trying times, small city, to be able to leverage a grant to save $10,000, $15,000 a year alone on one facility. We've been making those steps and leading by example, as my other mayors are, encouraging our own facilities to be retrofitted, to look at what we can do to lead by example. Our city was one of the first to actually address single stream recycling. We've been doing it. We've been actually doing it for almost 18 years. And we continue to strive to do better and really keep our costs down and help our residents on their day-to-day lives. So I'm really excited to be here today. And I'm here to say that I believe that we as a country and mayors and communities and partners, business partners that are all here in this room, we can address these issues. I thought flying here, I mean, we've accomplished so much. If you can build the Hoover Dam, there has to be a way to save off beach erosion somewhere out there in the leadership and the young entrepreneurs or the young technology and young engineers that are being created. Because as I'm sitting here, I have 2 buildings where it is no longer beachfront, it is oceanfront. Their foundations are looking at waves breaking against their buildings. But it's not time to build the ark yet. It's time to get to work, as we're doing here today, sharing our stories, our success stories, as well as, I think, a promising future in partnership with resilient communities. And we've been there, and it is, in a sad way, because of all the calamity that's going on, we're meeting, but it's a great opportunity, and there's a new horizon that we can continue to leverage all these stories and partnerships to really build resilience communities around the nation. So thank you very, very much.
Wow, Mayor Cooper, thanks for bringing us home and bringing these issues to heart. I want to say thank you to all our speakers today. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your inspiration. And thank you for helping lead this campaign, because this is a milestone. This is a historic moment. I want to just very quickly point out a couple of things that were said today that just, blew me away. In Des Moines, they had their wettest year in their 140-year history recently that just so happened to be followed by the driest year that was on record. Wow. In El Paso, in 1 year, they got 3 years worth of rain in 1 week. In Santa Barbara County, they had 4 major wildfires in 4 years. And in Hallandale Beach, 18 inches of rain in 18 hours. And of course, we heard in DC what would have happened if Sandy had taken that southern track. Listen, I've said this before at this series, that we can't realize a sustainable future that we all want if we don't build on the foundation of strong and resilient communities. This campaign is a vehicle for all of us to uphold that promise of a stronger, a greener, and a better future. So we invite all of you to join us, to be participants, to be active in this campaign. Talk to Mike, talk to me, talk to the mayors, talk to the local elected officials. I think it was Mayor Cook who said, we can't succeed unless we do it together. So please join us. Folks, this concludes our program. Thank you much for being here. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.